Our project began in early September. We looked over collections of artifacts, images, unlabeled charts, graphs, excerpts from newspaper articles, and connected these artifacts to our expedition topic, energy.
We had to build something impressive first out of these cards, which makes sense because hydroelectric dams are sort of feats of engineering.
There's like these maps, and it's really concentrated in Europe and Japan. And I know that France is like almost 100% nuclear.
It looks kind of like spaghetti all over the continental United States. Pretty cool. And then the density of the spaghetti, there's a key on the side that says 1 mile per hour, 3, 5, 10, 15, 30. So we thought maybe it's wind.
From here, we went to Greenfield Garden Cinemas and met with Steve Alves, a local documentary filmmaker. Here we learned our task. As a class, we were going to write, film, and produce a documentary. Steve showed us some of his work and spoke to us about the art of filmmaking, laying the groundwork for what would be the semester's endeavor.
When you make a documentary, you direct it for the first time in the editing room. That's when it really gets made. You can dig in your heels. Don't dig in your heels. Get the film done. Work to compromise, to figure out how you can make a finished film.
After 6 weeks or so of background content and film study, we moved on to the next stage of our project, proposal writing. We divided into 6 teams based on our interests, and each team designed a documentary proposal around the different energy case studies.
So what we said was our first chapter would be a general overview of the situation that's going on with Pilgrim. It's whether it should be relicensed or not.
Vermont hosted 13 million tourists this year.
Oh yeah. There's been a lot of interviews and other
Press releases.
In early November, our whole class gathered in a board meeting where 6 teams presented their proposals. We collectively chose Cape Wind as our topic.
Our train, just that it's a community divided by the controversy of Cape Wind. It's super controversial. Everyone on the Cape has an opinion. Everyone has a really strong opinion for the most part. And so we're going to try to get the sort of the personal side of that on the Cape.
Unless some sort of miracle happens in the next month or two, this isn't going to be, they're not going to start building, nothing's going to be finalized. It's still going to be the war raging on between the two groups. So instead of focusing on, this coming to an end, we're going to look into the future of Cape Wind, the future of offshore wind, compare and contrast with other European countries that have already so Cape Wind was the first planned offshore wind farm, but in the 20 years since it was started, other countries have managed to fully design, build, and implement their own offshore wind farms before we've done anything.
Just a few weeks later, we were off to the Cape. We set up interviews with key players in the Cape Wind controversy, as well as with scientists and residents. Different teams filmed in different locations to gather as much footage as possible in just a 24-hour period. Not just interviews, but B-roll footage too. Shots of local scenery and turbines on the Cape.
We're gonna find some turbines in the area and get some footage of them. So we're gonna look them up on our phones, Google some turbines. It worked last year.
We went down to the Cape and we had a drone to film drone shots of turbines.
Probably the most fun I had with the project was actually being at the Cape and filming and all that.
Holy crap, that's high up. And I'm just spending a lot of time with nothing, not touching the controls, because when you touch the controls, it jars the whole thing, and the whole screen gets messed up. So I'm gonna bring it back down.
camped out overnight in the rec room of a local church, where we celebrated the 18th birthday of 2 of our classmates. The next morning brought more interviews, more B-roll footage, and a brave ferry adventure in the midst of an oncoming storm. That afternoon, we packed up our gear and headed back to Four Rivers. After downloading and sorting all our footage, we moved into the most challenging stretch of the entire process, turning all our footage into a movie. Some students were scriptwriters who composed the narration of the film. Others researched facts, downloaded archival footage, and chose a soundtrack. Everyone else worked on the actual editing, each team taking a chapter of the movie to produce.
I've been on the research team finding research that we needed for writing the script.
We've been working with 5 other people, and we were writing the script for what the voiceover person is going to say.
I also edited chapter 5, so just like, you know, the B-roll and the footage for that, so that it could be ready for our voiceover when we put in our narration.
I was in charge of editing some of the last chapter. I really like editing because our content isn't very interesting on its own, but it's fun to put it in different patterns and put it together in different ways and see what works best.
The process was messy. We were working with 35 other people, and whole group decision-making took time and patience. Even within our small groups, we had to reconcile our different visions for the finished product.
Trying to work with like 35 other people gets hard sometimes. And we split them into like smaller groups, so I really only had to work with 3 other people for most of the time, which was fine. But when we go to whole group discussions and when we have to get the script written, when we have to get archival footage, we have to go to these other people, and it gets kind of hard to keep track.
So there were 4 editors on chapter 5, and getting both people on the same page, because it was 2 groups, that was a challenge.
I think really the most challenging part was just like working with 4 other people who had completely different writing styles, because it kind of sounds different in each of the parts, and so we would need to collaborate with each other and find words that work with all of our writing styles.
If you guys need anything, come and ask me. I'm tired of this.
You said to make comments instead of editing it.
I can't work with. I can't.
Change the oven to a comma.
Or a colon.
Oh, not oven to is. Isn't to comma.
That's good.
The topic itself threw up some unexpected challenges as well. Midway through the editing process, we caught word that NSTAR and the National Grid terminated their contracts with Cape Wind developers, which had serious ramifications for the future of Cape Wind and for our documentary. We held an emergency meeting to discuss the effects of this decision on our film and revised our plans accordingly.
We found out a couple of weeks ago today, which would have been somewhere in the middle of January, that Cape Wind is actually not looking as promising as we thought.
The companies have pulled out of Cape Wind, and we had to change our entire documentary based on what happened. And so the whole class had to like work together and figure out what we were going to change, what we were going to keep the same.
Not only were we working to meet a February 12th deadline, but we were continuously losing days due to snow. Amid school closings and delays, we scrambled to finish the project.
All the silent parts are gonna have first
I'm just looking forward to seeing how it all comes together, because my chapter specifically is like completely voiceover. It's all narration because it's the last chapter, so I'm kind of just looking forward to seeing how the script is going to come together.
Energy, form of electricity, the ever-beating heart of the modern world.
We're making a movie. I love movies in general, so being able to actually make one from start to finish, I think is really cool. And what's been challenging is also just making a movie. I had no idea what kind of stuff went into making one, and it's very difficult.
Even though it's been frustrating, our ability to actually work together like 36 people in a room working on a movie and having it actually come out okay. And there's been some times where I'll sit down with the editors and I'll say, well, this is what I have, and then they show me what they have, and it actually fits perfectly together, and it's really exciting.
Everyone's working together a bit better than I originally thought everyone would.
Okay, now I know which is that. Sorry. Every shot.
It doesn't matter. All the Making a documentary took time and effort, collaboration and negotiation, and we are now looking forward to seeing the final product.